The mountain road lay silent beneath a sky fading into silver, the last shimmer of daylight brushing the frozen peaks above Silver Creek. Down in the valley, only a few scattered porch lights glowed through the storm, flickering like small prayers against the cold. And on that lonely stretch of snow-covered road, an elderly couple moved slowly through the wind, their hands clasped as if holding on to hope itself. No one knew they were out there, no one but God. And sometimes, in the harshest storms, He sends help in the most unexpected form. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you're watching from. If stories of faith, kindness, and everyday miracles speak to you, please share this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps keep these stories alive. The snow road of Silver Creek. The wind cut through the valley, carrying the sting of winter across the empty mountain pass. Harold Thompson trudged beside his wife May, their footsteps sinking into drifts of fresh snow. Harold, a 74-year-old man with a wiry frame and a once straight back now bent by years of carpentry work, braced his gloved hand on a wooden cane. His beard, once thick and red, had faded to a soft white that clung to his cheeks like frost. Every breath burned in his chest, and the old injury in his right knee pulsed with a familiar ache. He had weathered hard winters before, but not one with a wife whose energy was fading fast. May Thompson leaned against him, her shoulders trembling with each step. She was 70, slight and graceful in the way long-suffering people often are, with silver hair tucked beneath a knitted hat. Her skin, pale and fine as parchment, tightened against the cold. She had always been the steady one, the voice of calm in their family, yet tonight even her soft resilience struggled beneath the storm's weight. Her breaths came shallow, each one sounding thinner than the last. Their old pickup truck had given up miles behind them. The engine coughed twice, rattled, then died on a curve midway up the Black Pine Pass. They had waited inside, hoping the heater's leftover warmth might buy them time, but when the cold seeped into the cab and darkness swallowed the road, Harold knew they had no choice. May had insisted she was fine, though her voice quivered when she spoke. Now they walked because they believed they must. Harold kept his arm firm around May's waist, forcing his weakened legs to move with a stubborn rhythm. He could feel her faltering, leaning more heavily with each step. The wind pressed hard against them, blowing snow into their eyes and pricking their skin. The path ahead was only a vague impression in the whiteness, a suggestion rather than a road. Harold tried to distract himself with memories of their daughter Emily, her laughter as a child, the way she'd cried when they left her at college, her voice trembling with joy last week when she called to say the baby had arrived early. He had promised they would come. He had promised they would meet their first grandchild before Christmas. But promises meant little when a storm rose like a living thing. May stumbled, and Harold caught her, feeling her body sag with exhaustion he had never seen in her. Her lips were turning pale, and he saw fear beginning to flicker in her gentle brown eyes. Not fear of death, but fear of failing to reach the child she loved with all her heart. "Just a little farther, sweetheart," Harold whispered, though he was no longer sure it was true. The mountains loomed like dark giants on either side, their ridges softened by snow. Even the pines seemed to bend beneath the storm, branches heavy with white. The world felt vast and empty, and Harold's hope thinned like smoke. Then, through the drifting curtain of snow, a faint yellow glow appeared. At first Harold thought it was a trick of the wind, a reflection on the ice. But as they moved forward, the light hardened into shape. A porch lamp, a house, a chance. May let out a quiet sound that was almost a sob, and Harold felt strength push through his legs. They followed the glow until a small wooden cabin emerged, tucked between two slopes. The windows were fogged from warmth inside. A stack of split logs lined the wall. Smoke curled from a chimney, thin, steady, promising heat, shelter, life. Harold raised his hand to knock, but his fingers shook violently. His knuckles barely tapped the wood before they gave out. He leaned hard against the doorframe, breath trembling. Inside the cabin, Ranger lifted his head. Ranger was a 5-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat dark across the saddle and lighter beneath his chest. His build was powerful and disciplined, the kind bred from years of service training. His eyes, amber and alert, scanned the door even before the knock echoed through the room. He let out a low rumble, a warning sound, not aggression, but recognition that something outside needed his master's attention. The fire crackled softly behind him, casting a warm glow on the man seated beside it. Noah Carter, a 38-year-old former Navy SEAL, set down his chipped ceramic mug and straightened. Noah carried his years of service in the rigid lines of his posture and the shadows beneath his eyes. His hair was dark, cut short, out of habit rather than vanity, and a jagged scar traced the edge of his jaw where shrapnel had once kissed bone. His beard was kept close, more practical than stylish. Broad-shouldered and quiet, he had the look of a man who had survived storms both outside and within. Since retiring from the teams, he had chosen solitude in the mountains, less from desire and more from necessity. Some wounds healed better in silence. When Ranger rumbled again, Noah's features shifted. He listened. A second knock came, faint, nearly swallowed by the wind. He felt a familiar tightening in his chest, that instinct to move, to assess, to act. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, Ranger at his heels. The dog's ears were forward, his body taut with readiness. Noah placed his hand on the metal latch. Ranger gave a soft, urgent bark, and somewhere outside the door, just on the other side of the storm, Harold Thompson began to fall to his knees. The chapter ends in the quiet moment before Noah opens the door, the decision poised on the threshold between danger and mercy. The reclusive soldier and the unexpected guests. Noah pulled the door open just wide enough for the storm's breath to push inside. The porch light flickered across Harold's bent form as he struggled to keep May upright. Snow clung to their coats in thick patches, and their faces were reddened by bitter wind. Noah reacted without thought. He stepped forward, catching May before her knees gave way. She felt weightless in his arms, fragile as a sparrow caught in the wrong season. Her eyes, a soft hazel drained of their usual warmth, fluttered as he carried her inside. Harold followed, gripping the doorframe to steady himself. Up close, Noah saw the older man's exhaustion more clearly. The trembling fingers, the shaking breath, the pale lines around his mouth carved by worry rather than age. Ranger trotted in behind them, his thick sable coat shaking off loose snow. The German shepherd positioned himself between the strangers and the door, a silent guardian. His ears twitched with every sound, reading the room with the precision of a trained protector. Noah wrapped May in a heavy wool blanket and eased her into the armchair nearest the fire, her thin shoulders hunched inward, shaking with the aftershocks of cold. Harold sank onto the nearby bench, rubbing his stiff knee. Noah knelt beside them. "Tell me what happened," he said, voice low but steady. Harold swallowed hard before speaking. "We were trying to get to Pine Ridge," he said. "Our daughter, she just had a baby. We saved all year, packed gifts, planned everything." May coughed, a light cough at first, then deeper, shaking her frame. Noah noticed the bluish tint at the edge of her lips. The cold had crept farther into her than he liked. Harold continued. "Truck died halfway up the pass. No phone signal. Snow was closing in. We walked. We didn't know how far we'd make it." Noah listened with the stillness of someone trained to absorb information quickly. Behind him, Ranger sat with his gaze fixed intently on May, head slightly tilted, sensing her weakness. Noah rose, added more logs to the fire, and filled a kettle with water. His cabin was simple, wood walls, hand-built shelves, a scarred coffee table. The warmth wrapped around them like a heavy quilt, pushing back the storm's relentless pressure. The kettle hissed. As Noah prepared 2 cups of hot herbal tea, he glanced at the radio on the counter. It had been humming faintly all evening with weather advisories, the kind locals took seriously. He twisted the knob to raise the volume. A calm but urgent female voice filled the room. "Blizzard warning for the Black Pine region. Expect complete whiteout conditions through the night. High risk of avalanche. Travel not advised." Noah exhaled slowly, not surprised, but not pleased either. May sipped the tea he handed her, fingers trembling around the cup. Some color returned to her cheeks, but her breathing remained thin. Harold took his own cup with a grateful nod. "You saved us," Harold murmured. "If your light hadn't been on, we wouldn't have seen the house." Noah shook his head. "You made it to the door. That counts for something." He didn't say what he thought. Many people didn't. Ranger walked over to Harold and sniffed his glove, tail giving a single slow wag, a gesture of acceptance. Harold smiled tiredly and rubbed the dog's head. Noah stood near the window. Snow struck the glass in small, rapid taps, each one sharp as a pebble. The world beyond the pane had become a swirling void. For a moment he felt the faint pull of an old memory. Another storm, another night, another rescue gone wrong. His left knee tightened involuntarily at the thought, a reminder of the mission that ended his service career. He pushed the memory aside. When he turned, May was watching him with quiet curiosity. "You live here alone?" she asked gently. Yes, Noah replied. Just me and Ranger. May nodded as though she understood something unspoken. The silence that followed was warm, almost fragile, the kind that builds around people suddenly connected by circumstance. But Noah's mind was already moving ahead. He knew Pine Ridge lay across the far side of the mountains. That meant crossing the pass. And no one crossed Black Pine Pass in a blizzard unless they had no other choice. He looked again at May, her frail hands, her tired eyes, the effort it took for her to sit upright. If she stayed the night, she would survive the cold, but she would miss meeting her first grandchild. Months, perhaps years, had passed since she last held her daughter. There are moments in life that do not wait for clear skies. Ranger padded to his side, pressing his head against Noah's leg. The dog's instincts aligned with his own, alert, calculating, prepared. Noah rested a hand on Ranger's neck. "Yeah, buddy," he whispered. "I know." Harold spoke softly. "We don't want to trouble you. Just let us warm up. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." But Noah had already made up his mind. He looked toward the storm again, then back at the couple. "You won't be walking anywhere," he said. "At first light, Ranger and I will take you to Pine Ridge." Harold blinked, stunned. May's lip trembled, not with cold, but with relief. Wind howled against the cabin walls, but inside, something steadier settled. A choice, a course. Ranger sat tall by the door, as if already waiting for dawn. And outside, the storm raged on, unaware that a journey had just been set in motion. Crossing the blizzard's spine, morning arrived without warmth. A dim gray light filtered through the storm clouds, turning the world outside Noah's cabin into a shifting veil of white. Snow blew in long, ghostly ribbons across the clearing, scraping along the frozen ground like cold breath from the mountains themselves. Noah stepped onto the porch with a practiced calm, testing the air the way a seasoned soldier tests unfamiliar waters. His dark hair, still damp from washing, clung to his temples beneath his winter cap. The scar along his jaw stiffened in the cold, but he said nothing. His movements were measured, controlled, the discipline of years spent in harsh terrain. Inside, Harold and May finished fastening their coats. May's complexion looked stronger after a night's rest, but the pallor at the edges of her cheeks remained. Harold did his best to hide the strain in his joints, standing tall whenever May looked his way, though Noah could see the subtle grimace each time he shifted his weight. Ranger paced beside the door, his harness already strapped on. The service dog, "Do not pet" patch flashed briefly each time the dog turned. His sable coat was thick and well-groomed, his steps steady. He carried a seriousness uncommon in most dogs, though his tail flicked once when Noah whistled softly. Ranger was 5 years old, but his eyes held the maturity of a soldier who understood the stakes. Noah loaded blankets, water, medical supplies, and food into the back of his rugged off-road truck, a vehicle scarred from years of mountain travel. The deep scratches, the weathered bumper, the matte paint dulled by storms, all hinted at the man who drove it, someone who had lived more than one life and survived them all. Harold helped where he could, though his hands shook with cold and age. "You sure this is safe, son?" he asked quietly. "No," Noah replied, tightening a strap. "But staying here means missing Christmas with your daughter. We'll manage the pass." May stepped closer to the truck, her petite frame bracing against a gust of wind. The wind ruffled her silver bangs beneath her knitted hat, and she clutched her coat with thin fingers. "We trust you, Noah," she said softly, her voice warm despite the cold. By the time they climbed into the truck, the storm was falling heavier than expected. Snow slapped against the windshield, melting into streaks that blurred the world outside. Ranger settled in the back seat, his amber eyes flicking from window to window, analyzing every movement in the storm. The ascent toward Black Pine Pass was immediate and unforgiving. Snowdrifts piled along the guardrails. Ice glistened like glass beneath the wheels. Noah gripped the steering wheel firmly, his jaw clenched as he adjusted to every slide, every sudden shift of weight beneath the truck's tires. Harold and May sat hand in hand, sharing a silence born of fear and hope, intertwined. They rounded a bend and came face to face with a jackknifed delivery truck skidding sideways across the lane. Noah reacted with instinct, slamming the brakes and spinning the wheel. The back of the truck fishtailed. Ranger barked sharply. The smell of spilled gasoline reached them even before the truck lurched to a stop, just 2 feet from the edge of the mountain drop. May gasped. Harold muttered a prayer. Noah steadied his breathing, checked on them, then pulled forward cautiously. "That was too close," Harold whispered. "Close is still alive," Noah answered. They pushed on, but halfway up the pass, the radio crackled with static before settling into a grim announcement. Avalanche reported on the north side of Black Pine Pass. Motorists should turn back immediately. May covered her mouth. Harold stared at the floor. Noah felt his pulse quicken, but kept driving, until the headlights illuminated a wall of snow and crushed ice blocking the road. Trees uprooted by the avalanche lay tangled within it, their branches jutting out like broken limbs. Noah stopped at the truck. The engine idled with a low growl. "There's no way through," he said quietly. Wind rocked the vehicle. The storm thickened around them. May swayed in her seat, a wave of dizziness washing over her. Harold wiped sweat from his brow despite the cold. If they turned back, they would be trapped between the growing storm and hazardous roads. If they stayed, May's condition could worsen. Noah made the decision quickly. Decisions made slowly in a storm could be fatal. "We're going over the ridge," he declared. "There's an old ranger outpost not far from here. We can reach it on foot." Harold looked out at the swirling white. "On foot? In this?" "It's safer than staying here," Noah replied. Ranger leapt from the truck as soon as Noah opened the door, his paws sinking into the deepening snow. The dog lifted his nose, sniffing the wind, then began trotting ahead, testing each patch of snow for stability. Noah helped May down carefully, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Harold followed, leaning heavily on his cane until Noah handed him a sturdier walking pole from the truck's storage box. They began climbing the slope beside the blocked road. Snow clung to their boots, dragging them downward. Ranger led with precision, stopping to bark sharply whenever he detected a hollow layer of ice. Noah guided the couple around each danger, his voice calm, steady, grounding them in the storm's chaos. Then, as they neared the midpoint of the ridge, a sudden crack echoed sharply behind them. A pocket of loose snow slid from the higher slope, spreading in a thin, fast sheet. Harold turned just in time to see the path they had taken disappear beneath the cascade. "Our way back," he breathed. "It's gone." Noah scanned the remaining path upward, the ridge ahead still intact. "We keep moving," he said. "There's no turning. Around now." Ranger barked in agreement, standing firm against the cold wind. And with the storm clawing at their backs and the mountain looming above, the group pressed forward, upward, toward whatever waited on the other side. The lights of Pine Ridge. The storm weakened as the long hours dragged on, though the cold still cut through the air like a sharpened blade. Snow drifted across the mountainside in gentle waves, instead of blinding sheets. By the time Noah led Harold and May over the last ridge, the sun had vanished completely, leaving only the dim silver reflection of moonlight on snow. Their breaths puffed out in tight, rhythmic clouds, proof that they were still moving, still alive. The abandoned ranger outpost appeared at last, half buried beneath a mound of snow. Its wooden structure leaned slightly to one side, as if time and weather had grown tired of holding it upright. The windows were dark, the door swollen from years of ice, but to those who had battled the mountain for hours, it was a sanctuary. Noah pushed the door open with his shoulder. Ranger slipped inside first, nose sweeping across the floor. The interior smelled of dust, old pine, and rusted metal. A broken lantern lay in one corner. An overturned stool rested beside a collapsed shelf. Even so, the outpost was sheltered. Solid walls, a stone hearth, and enough space for tired bodies to breathe. May nearly collapsed when she crossed the threshold. Noah caught her gently, lowering her onto a pile of folded canvas tarps he had gathered. Her face was pale beneath the flicker of a match as Noah lit the old fire pit. One spark caught, then another, until flames grew into a fragile but rising glow. Harold watched anxiously, kneeling beside his wife. "She's colder than she's letting on," he murmured. "I know," Noah replied, reaching for his medical pouch. "We'll get her stabilized." His movements were steady and efficient, shaped by years of combat medicine. He checked May's pulse, examined her breathing, and wrapped her in an emergency blanket that crinkled as it warmed. When she shivered, Ranger immediately curled beside her legs, offering the full heat of his powerful frame. May placed a trembling hand on the dog's back, her fingers sinking into his thick coat. "You're a good boy," she whispered. Ranger's tail brushed the floor once, softly. Harold leaned toward the fire, letting it thaw the stiffness in his hands. His lined face softened as the orange light danced across his features. He wasn't a large man, slight in build, with sunken cheeks and gentle blue eyes that carried years of love and worry. But tonight he looked smaller than ever, wilted beneath the weight of fear. Noah recognized that expression from places far away, the haunted dread of nearly losing someone you cannot live without. As the storm softened, Noah made his way to the dusty corner where an emergency radio sat beneath a tarp. It was old, its metal frame dulled by age, but when he turned the crank, a faint hum stirred within. He adjusted knobs with practiced patience until static sharpened into a wavering signal. A voice broke through the noise, a steady male tone with a mountain drawl. "Pine Ridge Rescue? Who's calling?" "This is Noah Carter," he answered. "Former SEAL, stranded at the Northern Ranger outpost with 2 civilians. One elderly female showing early signs of hypothermia. Coordinates as follows." The rescue operator responded with quiet urgency. "We'll send a team from the south route. Hold tight. Estimated arrival, 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Long, but survivable." Noah returned to the fire. May's breathing had steadied slightly. Harold sat beside her, murmuring soft comforts. Ranger kept watch at the door, ears shifting at every shift of wind. They waited in silence, wrapped in the crackle of flames and the distant moan of the storm's retreat. At last, headlights broke through the trees, dim, yellow, wavering. A rescue team arrived in a snow crawler, its treads cutting through the drifts with mechanical growls. The vehicle was driven by Sarah Wilkins, a seasoned mountain responder in her mid-40s. She was tall and lean, with ash-blonde hair tucked beneath a wool cap, and skin weathered by years of winter rescue work. Her gray eyes were sharp but kind, reflecting someone who had spent a lifetime stepping willingly into danger for strangers. Sarah approached with confident strides, flanked by another rescuer, Lucas Hale, a sturdy man in his early 30s with a knitted brown beard and strong hands accustomed to hauling gear through storms. Lucas carried a thermal stretcher and moved with the calm assurance of someone who preferred action to words. "Carter?" Sarah asked, breath puffing in white clouds. "That's me," Noah replied. "Good, we'll take it from here." Together they lifted May into the crawler, securing her into the heated stretcher. She looked fragile beneath the thermal blankets, but her eyes fluttered open when Harold took her hand. "It's all right, sweetheart," Harold murmured. "We're almost there." Ranger hopped into the vehicle without hesitation, settling near May's feet. Even Lucas, the kind of man who rarely smiled on duty, gave a small nod at the dog's protective stance. As they drove down the mountain, the world brightened. The storm weakened into a gentle snowfall, revealing glimpses of the valley below. And there, nestled beneath a blanket of white, Pine Ridge glowed. Golden street lamps shimmered like beacons of hope. Houses twinkled with Christmas lights. Smoke curled from chimneys, drifting lazily into the gray morning. Harold pressed a shaking hand to the window. "May, look, that's it. That's home." May's eyes softened. Tears gathered at the corners. When they arrived in town, Sarah guided them toward a modest blue house on Maple Lane. A porch light flickered gently, casting warm shapes against the doorway. The door opened as soon as Sarah knocked. Emily stood there, her newborn cradled in her arms. She was in her late 20s, with soft brown hair falling loose over her shoulders and tired but radiant eyes that widened with disbelief. "For the love of God," she whispered. "Mom? Dad?" May lifted her hand toward her daughter, and Emily nearly dropped the blanket in her rush to embrace them. Harold joined them, voice breaking with emotion. When Emily finally looked past her parents, she saw Noah standing in the snow, one hand resting lightly on Ranger's harness. "You brought them home," she said. Harold answered for him, voice trembling. "He did. He and that brave dog saved our lives." Emily stepped forward, placing her free hand on Noah's arm. The baby reached out toward Ranger, and the dog responded with a gentle tilt of his head, almost a smile. Inside the house, warmth spilled from the kitchen. A pot simmered, laughter rose, tears fell freely. And for the first time since the storm began, the world felt safe again. The soldier and the house among snow. The morning after the rescue, Pine Ridge awoke beneath a sky washed clean by night winds. Sunlight touched the rooftops with faint gold, and the storm that had threatened so many lives now appeared harmless, like a wild beast finally sleeping. In the center of town, newspapers thumped onto porches and into snowbanks, each front page carrying the same bold headline: "Reclusive Navy SEAL saves elderly couple in blizzard." Beneath the title was a photograph taken by a rescue volunteer, Harold and May holding their newborn grandchild, eyes shining with relief, while Noah stood at their side with Ranger sitting loyally at his boot. Ranger's ears were perked, his sable coat gleaming despite the countless hours of snow. Noah, by contrast, looked slightly uncomfortable in the picture, shoulders squared, expression calm but distant, as if the attention weighed on him. The article traveled quickly through town and onto highways. Truckers passing through Pine Ridge folded the paper beside their thermoses. A few even recognized the name Carter, some from rumor, some from the quiet legend of a soldier who had left the world behind but never abandoned its values. Yet back at Silver Creek, none of this disrupted the stillness of Noah's mountain life. When a reporter finally trudged up the slope to knock on Noah's wooden door, his boots crunching loudly through the fresh snow, Noah opened it only long enough to hear the man's introduction. The reporter was a young fellow named Ben Harper, slender with sandy hair and a warm smile too eager for its own good. His red scarf contrasted against his pale winter skin, and a camera hung from his neck like a badge of enthusiasm. "Mr. Carter," Ben began, "I'd like to ask a few questions about the rescue," but Noah simply shook his head. "I just helped them get home," he said, voice flat but polite. With that, he closed the door gently, leaving Ben blinking at the wood grain before turning back toward the road. Inside, Ranger sniffed the air, then padded back to his favorite spot near the hearth. Noah exhaled, rubbing his knee out of habit, the injury a permanent reminder of the mission that ended his active duty. He never liked attention. Rescues were not for glory. They were just the right thing to do. Word spread nonetheless. Soon long-haul drivers spoke in hushed gratitude about a cabin on the ridge where a porch light always burned, even on the worst nights. They said a tall, quiet man with a stiff left knee, Mann, would step outside whenever storms rolled in. Beside him, a disciplined German shepherd stood watch, amber eyes scanning the emptiness as though searching for souls in need. And locals in Silver Creek, people who had known Noah before the world broke him, began seeing him differently. Not with awe, but with a softened kind of respect. When old Mrs. Dalton needed groceries but couldn't brave the icy walk, Noah appeared at her doorstep, carrying 2 bags, one filled with vegetables and the other with her favorite tea. When the Jensen boys carved an icy trail for their sleds, Ranger trotted alongside them, nudging them gently away from dangerous slopes with a steadiness wiser than human words. A reputation formed, not loud or flashy, but solid, like snow settling onto pine branches. One afternoon, a package arrived on Noah's porch. No knock, no visitor, only a small wooden box wrapped in simple twine. Noah brought it inside, brushing the frost from the lid. Inside was a framed photograph. Harold, May, Emily, and the baby, standing in front of the small blue house in Pine Ridge. Noah and Ranger stood beside them. Beneath the picture, written in May's delicate handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for bringing us home." Noah stared at the frame longer than he expected to. Then he placed it gently on the shelf beside his old radio, the same one that had carried the rescue call years ago during a mission that went wrong. Ranger circled once and lay down beneath the shelf, his head resting on his paws as if guarding the memory itself. Days passed. Winter deepened. The mountain grew quiet again, save for the rumbling of distant storms. Whenever heavy clouds gathered and the wind began howling through the pines, Noah would pull on his thick navy coat. He would walk out to the porch, his limp more noticeable in the cold, and stand beside Ranger. Together they looked down the long, white road that curled through Silver Creek like a thread stretched across loneliness. Ranger's ears would twitch, his body stiffened in that familiar alert posture, waiting for a sound Noah might not yet hear. And sometimes, far away, a faint call for help would rise, broken by wind, softened by snow, but reaching them all the same. If Ranger barked once, short and certain, Noah did not hesitate. He would flip the porch light on, brighter than before, grab his pack, and step into the storm. Because he understood something deeper than duty. Not every battle is fought with weapons. Not every victory is marked by medals. And not everyone lost in a storm is meant to stay lost. For Noah Carter, the most honorable journey was never the one he fought on foreign soil. It was the path that led people home. In the quiet stillness of Silver Creek, where snow falls like whispered prayers, some people say what happened on that mountain was nothing short of a miracle. Not the kind that shakes the earth, but the kind God sends through ordinary hands and humble hearts. A worn-down soldier, a loyal dog, an elderly couple who refused to give up. Sometimes God's grace does not arrive with thunder or angels in shining robes. Sometimes it comes as a porch light glowing in a storm, a stranger willing to open his door, or the steady footsteps of someone who refuses to leave you behind. And maybe that is the message for all of us, that in our everyday lives, whether we are walking through grief, loneliness, or long winters of our own, God still sends help. sometimes through family, sometimes through strangers, sometimes through the quiet courage buried inside us. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment about where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories of faith, kindness, and everyday miracles, please consider subscribing to the channel. May God bless you, keep you warm through every storm, and guide every step of your journey home.